Hello, chefs, and welcome to my presentation on cannabis beverages and service. My name's Andrew Freedman. I'm known internationally as the Cannabis Sommelier. The Cannabis Sommelier was an idea on how to bridge the gap between wine and cannabis and how to really introduce new demographics to cannabis consumption. I started out by teaching cannabis and wine pairings, cannabis and craft beer pairings, how to cocktail with cannabis, and quickly moved into cannabis recipes. The obvious evolution from this was to start performing cannabis dining events. I was really fortunate to come from the wine industry for many years and have met incredible chefs all across North America. And as like most of you, we have a small connection to cannabis. Cannabis is an amazing piece of social stimulant, relaxer, but it's also an incredible ingredient with so much depth and complexity to explore. So once I started highlighting cannabis and wine pairings, which we're going to learn a little bit more about, a lot of my chef friends started becoming really excited and wanting to perform these dining events. Now, the dining events that I present are maybe a little bit different than a cannabis dining event you've seen in past. I know it has been getting a lot cooler, which is super exciting, but it's still a very underground movement. So when I present a cannabis dinner, I always present 5 courses. The first 4 courses have 2.5 milligrams of THC infused into each dish, 10 milligrams of THC through the first 4 courses. It's about an hour and 15 minutes doing the omakase chef's plate style table. Then for dessert, we see about 20 to 25 milligrams of CBD. For me, this is a really appropriate dosage throughout. But the most important part about understanding the dose is also pairing it with wine. And now that reminds me, we're actually filming on National Wine Day. So I think I need to have a glass of some great Canadian wine, a Sem Sauv from Sage Hills. Really looking forward to this. So when we're talking about pairing cannabis and wine, whether it be on the nose or in an infused dish, we always need to be very conscious of what our dosage is. The dose is always the poison, for lack of a better term. So each course in my dining events is paired with a wine. And the important thing about the wine is to use that vocabulary, vernacular, and storytelling to really draw a picture and a new bridge for the dining consumer to understand what cannabis really is and what it can be in the future. You know, thanks to a bunch of drunken monks for having nothing better to do than pray and drink wine for writing down all the history, we're really right in the middle of that when it comes to cannabis pairing, cannabis infusion today. So when we talk about cannabis service, cannabis beverage, there's really 2 sides to the discussion. Cannabis service is us having the control in our restaurant and using our duty of care to administer this intoxicant to give people a new depth, a new element, a new dimension to their dining experience. If we can cook with port, wines, and whiskey, and our bartenders can serve, a plethora of drinks up to a 2 ounce in a single serving, then why wouldn't that duty of care, that power of service really end up in our hands as the curators, the chefs, right? The hardest part, again, as I mentioned, is dosage. But as we see more and more controlled dosage, single service SKUs and items become readily available throughout different markets in the world, it becomes much, much easier to break down the understanding of what serving a large banquet cannabis infused food could be. We're always scared to mess people up. But the number one thing is, if we start low and go slow and make sure that we pace everything, we'll really meet a certain expectation and experience without making a customer overly intoxicated. I'm really proud to be the person who has presented amazing dinners with amazing chefs all over North America, and every single one of them, we've had alcohol consumption. Now, is alcohol consumption legal? No. Is serving cannabis fine dining legal? No. So when we're creating these new pathways of understanding, we really have to do what we think is right. And for me, I love wine. Wine is such an important part of the dining experience. Beverage is a super important part of the dining experience. If we don't have a beverage pairing, what is the fun of food? The sommelier's whole role in the restaurant is to take you to a place, create emotion, and to really grasp that flavor to this memory, and to sell better bottles and create better margin. But we'll talk about that too. Cannabis can really do that. It opens up a whole new door to exploring a depth of sensory perception and intoxication with a customer, while also giving you the opportunity to tell a ton of really cool stories. The history of cannabis is kind of shrouded in mystery until you start digging a little bit deeper. And these stories are incredible. The stories of people smuggling cuts, we'll call them vines to translate it to wine, across international borders because they knew that would survive. One of my favorite stories to contrast it to is Hermann Weiss of St. Urbanshof in the Mosel in Germany, coming to Canada in the late 1970s, realizing that there was a great aptitude for Riesling in the Niagara region. Import of his agricultural product, his vines, wasn't legal, so he stuffed suitcases, he smuggled them in, and he planted them. And today in Canada, that's the most recognized and planted Riesling clone around because of how stable it is and how it was built. So when we start telling stories like this and we can translate it, it really gives a new opportunity to the customer to create that memory with you. Now, let's dive a little bit into cannabis and wine pairing, and then we'll go into cannabis infusion. But one thing I'd really like to touch on, as we see new laws progress and our systems change of legality, cannabis is definitely a massive opportunity to start presenting in a restaurant atmosphere. When we're thinking about how we create margin in our dishes, alcohol service is obviously a massive margin maker. It's a great money maker, and why a lot of us didn't get to have that money with our takeout and takeout services. So putting cannabis into that fold, you can really still start creating that great margin moment where you're taking an ingredient, a culinary ingredient that maybe costs you 15 to 20 cents to introduce into your dish, and now you're creating an extra $10 of margin out of it because that's the expectation from the consumer. Massive, massive opportunity as we see the downshift or the new evolution change through our dining experience. Why wouldn't we have this option? So let's kick it into a little cannabis and wine pairing, because I love this experience and I think it's so cool and visceral, and I hope you'll play along if you have a little bit of weed and wine. So I poured Sem Sauv, a Bordeaux Blanc, but grown in Canada from an awesome organic producer. This was Sir Lee, so on the leaves, really nice and bready. Let's dig our nose in. Oh yeah, crisp apricot, apple, just bursting with like underripe flavors of all these tropical fruits. So when we're doing our cannabis wine pairing, we want to take our wine and we really want to put our sniffer in it. Enjoy it, love it, understand that wine, just like any other wine pairing you've ever done. Pretend like you know what you're doing. This one is beautiful and complex. I think it's going to be a great pairing. Sauv Blanc Semillon. And then we want to go to our cannabis. Here, I have some cannabis that I grew actually, because everybody in Canada is allowed to grow 4 plants. And this is Barbara Bud crossed with grapefruit. And I thought the grapefruit would go really well. So let's dig our nose into it and see what we get. Oh, it's almost like peach yogurt, grapefruit, like fuzzy peach skin, a little bit of confectionery, and obviously a little bit of that skunkiness, which is really nice. Now, if we want to complete our pairing, you don't ever have to actually smoke anything. You don't have to ingest any cannabis, but it's all about tricking our olfactory reflex, that sense in the back of our nose. We can only taste 5 things: sour, sweet, salty, bitter, and umami. But we can smell millions and millions of combinations of flavors and memories, which is absolutely fantastic. So what are we going to do? We're going to confuse our senses to make a great cannabis and wine pairing. Dig your sniffer in. Get it good. You know, still the same. Underripe green apple, crisp apricot. It's really interesting. It smells like biting into an underripe apricot. Go deep, get in your nose, and then back to the cannabis. And then back and forth. And you'll start smelling an evolution happen in both your wine and your cannabis, because now your olfactory reflex, your olfactory sense, is becoming confused and you're creating something different. So what I've perceived is much more sweetness, a much more intense sweetness comes out of the wine, almost like it's candied the wine. One of the other interesting things to do, because I mentioned we can only taste things, but our smell is our major influence on taste. Have a sip of your wine. Sniff of cannabis. And the perception of how it changes on your palate is incredible. And this is the same idea that we have with a food and wine pairing. We need to play with the flavors. We need to bring that acid into balance. We need to bring that heat back with a little bit of sweetness. Saltiness, let's tone it down with that sweetness again. All of these pieces really evolve the dining experience and give the customer this opportunity. Now, when we're talking about dosage, I started on it that I personally serve 2.5 milligrams through 4 courses to a total of 10 milligrams of THC. That's Health Canada's recommended dose for a cannabis edible for 1 serving for a beginner. I think this is a really appropriate place to start to hopefully give somebody who isn't a regular consumer of cannabis the intoxicating experience that they want without making them feel uncomfortable. Now, I mentioned that I do dessert infused with CBD. CBD is THC's counterpart. CBD is non-intoxicating. Although it is psychoactive, having effects in your mind, it's not intoxicating and psychedelic like cannabis is. And one of the cool things about CBD is actually that it tones down a lot of the anxious effects of THC. We have these CB1 and CB2 receptors all throughout our body in these major zones, our brain, breast tissue, heart, and your CB1 receptor is flooded with THC, and it's like a lock and a key. And when you introduce THC into your endocannabinoid system, you become intoxicated. But one of the cool things about CBD is it also fits in the CB1 receptor and CB2 as well. And so when you sneak CBD in there, it actually fills up that receptor a bit more, leaving you with a less intoxicated feeling. So when we can move and work a higher dose of CBD into the end of our dinner, I believe that we're giving really the effectiveness of CBD through the dining experience. Now, I will contrast that with the ethical dose of CBD for medical benefit is supposed to be 10 to 25 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So with CBD, you're really never going to go too much. And it's a great place to make a customer feel like they have a bunch of value in the meal. Because you never want somebody to go into a cannabis dinner and walk out feeling like they were cheated, short poured, or anything. Now, I want to touch on that quickly too before the end of my talk. Alcohol service and cannabis service is a very fine line. And we always need to be making sure that we're acting cordially, professionally, and with our best duty of care in mind. Most of us who have consumed cannabis, especially in Canada where I am, have had a couple beers or some wine and then consume some cannabis. It is very important to not be drunk before giving cannabis. This is where we get terrible, terrible effects. Consuming a small amount of alcohol while enjoying some cannabis is a great synergistic effect that may even lead to harm reduction and not overconsumption of alcohol. But when we are pouring alcohol, it's always important, again, to start low and go slow. You may have noticed the glass I poured, about 1.5 ounces of wine. This is a totally appropriate amount of wine to give any customer. And if you notice some are able to drink more, quicker drinkers, or somebody just doesn't want infusion, this is a great way to mitigate and make their experience much more enjoyable, much better. It's all about knowing your dose. The dose is the poison, never forget. But we can present these amazing cannabis culinary experiences to new customers, create new opportunity for revenue, and create a new opportunity to create that memory. Because what we really want is a lifelong customer. And if we can create that, create a great memory, well, what's stopping us from changing the world of culinary? There's only been a few evolutions in dining. The end of prohibition of alcohol almost 100 years ago. Now we wouldn't even consider going to dinner without a fantastic pairing. I really appreciate you hanging out, listening to the ideas I had. I hope this helps. I hope you can go forward in cannabis service with confidence and courage. Check out the ACF's Culinary Cannabis and Edibles course. My name's Andrew Freedman. I'm the Cannabis Sommelier. You can find me at thecannabissom.com at the Cannabis Somm or anywhere on the internet, Cannabis Sommelier. I look forward to hearing from you.